Crisis Radio. Take a look at Tarpley.net. Look at that essay, China Buys Dollars as Fears of World Depression Grow, article and commentary from Russia Today, from actually Tuesday of this week. I've got here a copy of the Washington City paper, August 20th to 26th. This cover story here is very ominous for Obama. It must chill him to see the cover of this. Is Adrian Fenty a jerk? That's what political insiders say. The question for the rest of us, does it matter, by Alan Suderman. The story here is we have Adrian Fenty, the mayor of Washington, D.C., elected for the first time in 2006, a young, ambitious black politician, similar in some ways to Obama. And, of course, the big thing that Fenty has done is bring in the union buster Michelle Rhee and her union-busting foundation-funded methods to destroy the Washington Teachers Union as a first step towards destroying the entire public education system, because that's the goal. Privatize some of it, but most of it gets destroyed because finance oligarchs don't want to pay for that kind of stuff. They don't care whether your kid can read. They have no notion of a nation. They think they can always get super exploited people from India or someplace else, right, who probably do know how to read and write. So is Adrian Fenty a jerk? Right now, the Washington schools are about to open. They brought in 4,500, I have to say, strikebreakers from Teach for America. Idealistic kids. This is typical, right? You get the unions on strike and the college kids come in and break the strike. That's an old tradition from the 1920s. So this is being resurrected. And they do it because of their idealism, right? They're doing it for the children. But in reality, what they're doing is destroying the system. Now, the challenge to Adrian Fenty is based on the fact that people really dislike him. And I don't know whether Obama has been able to control his temper behind the scenes, but Fenty here in D.C. cannot. So we've had a series of ward-level straw polls pitting Fenty against his challenger, Vincent Gray, another black politician, the head of the city council here in D.C., and Fenty has lost all of them. Fenty is the darling of the Washington Post, the Catherine Meyer Graham tradition over there, and he's the darling of the financiers, because this whole exercise in seizing control of the school system and then busting the union and destroying the entire thing, that's one of the main lines. And we see that with Obama and Arne Duncan, Secretary of Education. So far, Fenty has lost all of those straw polls. He's lost every one of them. And on September 14th, we have the Democratic primary in the District of Columbia, which is tantamount to election. Republican Party practically non-existent in the district. And it looks like Fenty is going to lose. And if he does, that is a very ominous, that's a Hindenburg omen for Obama, that he's going to be in trouble. Similar things going on in Massachusetts with Deval Patrick, because we saw that the governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, was spouting the same kind of advertising copy from Plouffe and Axelrod and these people, right? The aspirational, messianic kind of stuff. And that, of course, then when you get to the hard realities, it doesn't go over well. The primary elections, what do we hear from this? I'm suggesting that people look at the election in Australia this past Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In Australia, you had the Australian Labor Party, that's with formerly Kevin Rudd, was in power, and the leadership of the Australian Labor Party changed, of course, and they were pitted up against the center-right party, Liberal Conservatives, I guess they call themselves, and turns out to be a standoff. It's an Australian standoff. Each group, the parliament is 150 seats, and each group got 72, 73 seats. There's a small number of independents. So what you've got there is essentially a hung parliament. Now, that comes after the British hung parliament. The French, Sarkozy lost the regional elections. In Germany, Merkel lost control of the Bundesrat, the upper house or federal council. In the Netherlands, we had a hung parliament. So we're getting signs of political instability. Good to tote these up on the edges of things. In Australia, it was Julian Gillard for the Labour Party against Tony Abbott of the centre-right party. And the fact that it turns out to be essentially even Steven at the end, right, a tie, and nobody has a majority, I think that may be the approximate situation here in the U.S. On the one hand, the horrors of Obama are evident. On the other hand, when you look at this collection of ogres and cavemen, troglodytes and monsters emerging on the Republican side, right, the Sharon Angles, the Rand Pauls, the rest of the people coming forward, this guy Scott in Florida, we've got who else? Anyway, a bunch of others. Joe Miller in Alaska. These people are right out of the Alf Landon playbook. They're essentially Robert Taft, maybe Barry Goldwater. They are typical reactionary Republicans. I don't see any anti-war thrust coming out of them, anti-dictatorship coming out of them. I see some people that are actually pretty oppressive in many ways. People are surprised that Murkowski was defeated in Alaska. That is a feud between the oligarchical Murkowski machine and the Palin machine, and Palin has perhaps triumphed in the end, although the absentee ballots remain to be counted. This guy Scott in Florida seems to be an official of the Hospital Corporation of America. In other words, a profiteer. Their racket was to take community hospitals that were nonprofit, drive them out of business, and turn them into for-profit hospitals at higher prices, and then skim off the profits. That's asset stripping. That's what these people do. So also the fact that McCain was able to hold on against the reactionary Republican J.D. Hayworth, I think, indicates that the even in a Republican primary like that, the appeal of these Tea Party extreme types is much less than was thought. Right? You didn't have to go all the way back to Alf Landon and Robert Taft to have an opposition to Obama. You could have said no. You could have done the Eisenhower Republican route, which was much better for the country. Rebuild the interstate highway system. Put some stress on big industry, big business, right? With Eisenhower, it was General Motors. Well, I'm not exactly a fan of General Motors, but General Motors is a whole lot better than Wall Street. And there we are. So it seems to me that what the likely outcome is that the Republicans take the House by a small margin, and I hope they do, frankly, so we could get these investigations going of the kind that Phil Berg is talking about. Back in a minute.